understand. I'm starting to believe he doesn't want to be found or doesn't want to talk to you. Look, we've been coming to this tough area for the last few months and still haven't found him. The people here aren't helping. Some might even be telling him where we're looking so he can hide somewhere else. I've never seen anyone so good at staying out of sight for this long. We've traveled these roads so much we should have seen him trying to get a ride at some point. I know, but I need to find him and explain things. I think he understood what happened that day you let him see us, but I don't think you prepared him for it well enough. I know. I should have talked about sharing relationships sooner. I thought he would be open to it. It doesn't mean I care for him any less just because I want to have deeper connections with him and you and Mark. But I need to explain that to him face to face. He won't respond to emails or texts, and he definitely doesn't pick up his phone when I call Dot. Mary scoffed. With the poor phone service out here, it's not hard to imagine he might have ditched his phone. But this is starting to feel like a quest for something rare. If he doesn't want to be found, we can't keep coming back here. Mark will have to stay home next trip to work, and I will need to put in extra time at my job to ease my supervisor's worries about how often I'm away. I don't know how your boss gives you so much time off. I told her my husband is missing and I need to find him. She has been really understanding, but I need to return with you, work for a couple of weeks, and then come back to search again. Somehow, I believe he is still here in the Sandhills. I'm not sure why. He never mentioned this area when we were together. He doesn't have family here, and there's no way he's working without a vehicle, Dot. Do you think he got a different car and is leaving his truck behind to keep us in the dark? Megan might have shrugged, but since Missouri couldn't see her, she stayed quiet. I don't think so. He's hardly spent any money since he left. After the first few days, we haven't found any fuel records or anything. The only reason I know he's in this area is because of the alert I filed with law enforcement. A state trooper spoke with Kelly after he was seen. He was working on that first ranch we checked. I guess the ranch owner told Kelly we were there because we didn't get any help from him. I can't imagine Kelly doing simple work like that. He's always in the office and only looks at properties from time to time. What made him think he could do what people do on a ranch? They lived in such a simple way with outhouses and no internet. He couldn't imagine living like that. Dot Missouri almost laughed, but then remembered how he had felt when he first arrived at the Circle Bar X ranch. His first impression wasn't too different from Mary's. He felt relieved that he had never openly expressed how backward he thought ranch life was. Someone in the cafe might be listening to Mary and could decide not to help her or Megan find Kelly free. Dot suddenly, He shook off these thoughts. He was so used to calling himself Missouri that he started to see Kelly as just a distant memory. Was he losing his mind? As the women talked, he thought about the differences between Kelly Free and himself. They were really the same person, but Missouri was just a ranch worker without much connection to others, while Kelly Free was a married man with responsibilities. They both had a sense of right and wrong, but Kelly had been let down by the woman at the next booth. Kelly needed to resolve things with Megan, but Missouri didn't need to. He realized he eventually had to bring together his old and new selves, but that wasn't going to happen today. He started listening again to the conversation behind him. Mary, I'm going to check the library again. They have internet access, and Kelly needs to send some emails and get answers from his lawyer. Since I know his passwords, I can check his email accounts and see if he's online. I may not know where he is, but this will help narrow our search. He might even mention to someone like his parents or his lawyer where he is. I'll find him through his accounts. Missouri felt a wave of frustration. He had forgotten that Megan knew the passwords to his personal accounts. There hadn't been any need for secrecy until Megan had chosen to see other partners. He knew he needed to fix that soon. He tried to remember if he or Lawrence had talked about his finances in any emails or texts. He didn't think so, but he needed to check. Could Megan see if he was looking at old emails? The two women seemed done eating as they stood up and walked past him without really noticing the man with the beard in the next booth. Missouri took his time finishing his coffee. It was clear that the two women had no idea he was there or that he could change things for them. He shouldn't have been surprised since he had never had a mustache or beard, and Megan had always said she didn't like them. She even mentioned that she wasn't a fan of the short stubble look that some celebrities wore these days. Missouri picked up his hat after leaving a tip and walked to the cashier to settle his bill. He still had plenty of cash because he had cashed most of his checks from the Circle Bar X, and Ronnie Bentley from the Double B had paid him in cash. He kept most of it hidden in different pockets of his coat, pants, and even his bags, so it would be easy to reach but not all in one spot. He bought some hard candy because he had heard that old cowboys enjoyed it while on the trail. He also picked up a couple of bottles of good whiskey, claiming it was for medicinal use only. Carrying his plastic bag back to camp, he approached quietly and surprised a man going through his belongings. Without thinking, he had his .45 in hand, pointed at the stranger. "Hands up." The man froze and slowly stood up. "Turn around. I want to see who I'm dealing with. The man turned slowly, revealing himself as Mark Brooks, looking pale and uneasy. Missouri feigned ignorance. "What do you think you're doing here?" Mark stuttered. "I'm looking for someone. Well, you won't find anyone in my stuff. Empty your pockets. What question mark? Listen, I can shoot you right where you stand. No one would argue it was an accident. You'll be gone, and I'll be out of here before they even find you. Now empty your pockets so I can see you're not trying to steal from me." Mark tried to explain. "No, I really am looking for someone. He's my best friend. My wife and his wife are in town looking for him, and I thought he might be camping out here. We've been trying to find him. His name is Kelly Free, and we need to bring him home. I was just hoping to find something in the bags that might tell me who they belong to since no one was here when I came. Maybe I believe you, maybe I don't. I won't say this again. Put your pockets on that log or there will be trouble. He hesitated, so Missouri fired a shot into the ground near him. He knew he shouldn't fire again. It could upset the horses, and someone would surely call for the sheriff if they heard the noise. Mark probably didn't think about that, but Missouri did. It seemed like the first round had made Mark really nervous. Missouri felt scared and quickly took items out of his pockets. He had to sound different to keep Mark from recognizing him. The beard, mustache, and big hat helped with that. Seeing Mark had nothing of his, Missouri signaled for him to put his things back into his pockets. Once that was done, Missouri led Mark to the edge of his campsite. He kept his voice low. "Why don't you leave this person alone?" Missouri tucked the gun back into his waistband. Mark started to lower his hands. "He is my friend and he needs help. We want him to come home so he can feel better. His wife just wants to talk with him. She loves him and he has been away for months." Mark suddenly looked closely at Missouri's face. His fear might have eased, but something about Missouri seemed familiar. "What's your name, stranger?" "They call me Missouri." Mark, curiosity was piqued. "Why Missouri? Well, everyone has a name for a reason. Texas is too common, Oklahoma is long, Iowa doesn't sound good, and Kansas isn't popular here. If I were in Missouri, my name would probably be different. But what is your real name?" Missouri revealed the gun again. Asking that can really get you in trouble. You never know, I might not be a good person. So, why not take a hint and leave before things get messy for you? Mark's eyes got big as he remembered the gun. He nodded and slowly stepped back. After stumbling a few times, he turned to watch where he was going and then ran away quickly. He didn't look back. Missouri smiled, knowing Mark would remember him. The disguise had worked for a while. It wasn't really a disguise. It was just a way to stay low while being away from people. Missouri then started to pack up his camp. He knew Mark would soon return with help, so he needed to leave quickly. His campsite was surrounded by trees, so he moved downstream to stay hidden from anyone who might be searching for him. If he could get over the hills, he could find another hiding place. But since he didn't have much time, he worked quickly. He was used to breaking camp, so it only took him about 10 minutes. The horses were ready after their break, so Missouri let them run by the stream for a couple of miles before circling around Gordon. Cody was to the east of Gordon, but didn't think there would be public Wi-Fi available. He needed to reach Lawrence to check if all his tasks were completed before talking to Megan. He wasn't going to let her benefit from this situation. It took time to get past the different fences he encountered, but he didn't see anyone in charge while doing so. Occasionally, a pickup or car passed by as he crossed the highway, but they didn't slow down or show any interest in him. In fact, most locals just waved and continued on their way. By nightfall, he found himself a few miles west and south of Gordon again. He stopped at a farm, and the owner kindly let him put the horses in the barn. The owner, a single woman with her widowed mother living with her, invited him for dinner. He was surprised by their warm welcome, but soon learned that they, like the ranchers, were somewhat expecting him. Martha, the owner, laughed when he asked her about it. Missouri, everyone around here is looking out for you. When those 3 troublemakers came to town, no one had any news about the man they were searching for. We aren't as foolish as they think. We know who you are and that you work hard, stay sober, and are nice to women and helpful to anyone in need. So, you're one of us. They'll look and then go home. They visit every other weekend or so and ask questions. Most of the ranchers you've worked with know you passed through but don't bother you. When you come to town, no one questions you. We all think you have your reasons for being here and not talking to her. And that's enough for us. Maybe someday you'll share the real story, but I bet the gossip is even more interesting. He smiled at her and then began sharing his own story. He talked about how bad things tend to come in 3s and explained each one. After finishing, Martha smiled back at him. You know, life has its strange ways. You believe 3 bad things happened to you. First, you lost your job. But think about it. Your boss didn't appreciate you and pushed you to live beyond your means. Now you can do things your own way, and from what you've said, there are many clients who would prefer your approach. She paused. The second bad thing was finding out your wife was unfaithful. Losing your job that day helped you discover this. How long would it have gone on without you knowing? You say she planned for that day, but did she really intend to keep living that way and just hope for the best? No. That bad situation turned into a good one. You managed to escape a tough place that wasn't your fault. Missouri thought about it and started to see her point. He was healthier and wiser now than when he worked for Jerry Myers. He was thinking more about his future, even though he was currently just taking each day as it came while riding his horse. She continued. Thirdly, your truck breaking down in Hyannis might have worked out for the best. Maybe it wouldn't have been any easier if you had planned it. The whole trip, driving out of Missouri, then north to Nebraska, and finally into the Sandhills, seems like it was meant for you. I believe something greater was guiding you to heal. It brought you to meet that rancher. You needed to take care of some animals and help with the hay. You needed this change, and it was given to you. I can guess you look different now compared to a few months ago. You mentioned your wife didn't even recognize you. That other guy who passed by your camp might think he knows you because of your name, but if no one came out, he might be unsure or even too shy to approach the new you. She paused before continuing. You probably seem older now. Without sunglasses, you might squint against the sun. Your beard has some gray in it. Your hair is now about shoulder length, unlike before when you likely kept it short and neat for work. Your hair even has a bit of curl to it, which I doubt it ever had when it was shorter. I bet sitting here with me is the most you've talked in a while. When you don't speak often, your voice can feel a bit rusty. That Mark fellow might not even recognize your voice. Missouri laughed. He was definitely focused on something else. She smiled. Oh, it's going to be a funny story for everyone. I know I shouldn't share what you told me, but I just might the next time I'm in town, which could be tomorrow. I've got some work to do at the church. Missouri finally found something to smile about. This woman, at least 60 years old and quite big-hearted, was funny and had a wonderful spirit. Her mother was still active and helpful, but had a more straightforward approach, making them seem like quite different personalities. Missouri stayed there for a few days before heading into town again. He set up camp on the edge of town and walked in for his errands. His first stop was the library, where he accessed their Wi-Fi. He created a temporary free email account to reach out to Lawrence Roberts. Next, he called Lawrence's office on his phone to share his new email address, ensuring none of his messages went to the spam folder. Lawrence assured Missouri that the money had been transferred out of the country and shouldn't be accessible to Megan. He warned Missouri that the courts could demand a clear list of all funds and might make Missouri give up at least half in the final decision. Missouri asked, "What if I never file for divorce?" Megan could wait and file for divorce, saying you abandoned her. They would still take account of what you both own. But what if she can't find me to notify me? She would still win a decision against you based on what the court decides. I can stand in for you, but most judges don't like that and could change the outcome because you didn't show up. He paused for effect. Look, Kelly, The courts often favor women in these situations. In the past, men usually got most of the assets while their wives and kids struggled. Now, the courts favor women and work hard to support them. It often assumes that the man earns more than the woman, which was true in your case until you lost your job. Her lawyer will claim you didn't give her what she deserved according to property laws. The court might agree and hold it against you for leaving her. They rarely consider what you've been through, especially in bigger cities. Missouri replied. Since I live here now, can we file here and let a local court handle my case against her? No, sorry. Your marriage and most of your time together were in Missouri, so it should be decided by a local court. If you could get her to move there with you, you might get a better outcome. I guess we'll leave things as they are for now. I'll start moving around again. There's a lot of space for me to cover, and it will be hard for her to find me. I'll get in touch again when I can. For now, we'll continue as we have. A couple of days later, Missouri went to a convenience store and bought a pay-as-you-go phone. He wanted to keep his regular phone turned off and the battery removed in case Megan tried to track him. Back at his camp, he found he had a decent signal, so he decided to call his wife. First, he tried the house but realized it was still early and she might be at work. He recalled her work number and dialed it. He reached the switchboard and was connected to her extension. He was surprised. She must have received a promotion since she never had an extension before. She answered on the second ring. Hello, this is Megan Free. How may I help you? I'm surprised you're still using my name. Why not your new family's name, the Brooks? Who is this? Is this some kind of prank call? If it is, I'm not amused. What, you don't recognize your own husband? Has Mark been talking to you so much that you can't believe it's me? I'm surprised you're at work instead of with your friends. Did you get a new phone number? She ignored his comments after the first question. Is this really you, Kelly? Is this a prank? Why would anyone pretend to be me? We're not famous. Every time we come to Nebraska, I leave my number in case someone sees you. Most calls are wrong, but sometimes someone calls and says they've seen you. I fell for it a few times. I really dislike those people. She must have looked at her phone. Hey, this isn't Kelly's number. What's going on? I'm not calling from my phone because I don't want you tracking me. That's not why I called. I want you to stop looking for me. I don't want to see you, talk to you, or have any contact with you. Just let it go. File for divorce. The court will split everything, and I will tell my lawyer to make it easy for you. Forget you ever met me. Change your name back or take my name if you like. But Kelly, I love you and miss you. Please come home or meet me somewhere so I can explain how I feel. You say you love me, but you've been with our friends and think I should accept it. How long were you going to keep this hidden from me? Please don't lie. I came home unexpectedly that day, and you had no idea I was coming. I wasn't sure how to tell you. I thought you might react badly. I guess I was right. Really? What made you think that? It doesn't matter anymore. Your reasons don't matter. Just leave me alone. There was silence for a moment. Missouri was about to hang up when Megan started talking again. She sounded upset. I love you and miss you. I want you back home. Please don't hang up. Why do you want me back? I send you money every month. You must be making more with your promotion, so you don't need my support as much. You have 2 others who can be there with you. You shouldn't need me like this. No, you don't understand. I care about Mary and Mark, but I love you. They can't replace the bond we have. Mark and Mary didn't share dreams like you and I used to. I really miss that. Missouri scoffed. That's not going to happen. Honestly, I hardly think about you at all, except to wonder if we'll bump into each other one day. I'm still deciding if I'll just ignore you, confront you, or if I should take matters into my own hands. What do you mean by take matters into my own hands? In the past, people were treated harshly for being unfaithful. From what I hear, some people here feel that way still. Others think you just need to stay in the city where your actions are more accepted. I guess I won't know how I feel until I actually see you. Just so you know, I'm ready for anything. Megan kept crying. There was some noise in the background, but Missouri couldn't hear clearly. He heard her tell someone that she was okay and just trying to talk to her husband. When she returned to the call, she was talking to a silent phone. Feeling a bit rude, Missouri turned off the phone and went to prepare his lunch. He thought about how little he worried about her nowadays. It was true. He was more focused on making sure his gear was not too heavy for his pack horse. He considered his next stop. the weather ahead, and how he might assist the next rancher he met. But thoughts of Megan and their problems rarely crossed his mind now, except in moments of frustration about how she had disrespected their marriage or when he occasionally thought about reconciliation. Increasingly, days would pass without him thinking of her at all, right now. He felt a bit irritated that she was still trying to reach out to him. But his anger was fading from the intense frustration he had felt when he found out about her unfaithfulness. He no longer felt confused. If she could be with others and expect him to just accept it, then their marriage was over. He wasn't a young man seeking casual relationships. He was someone who wanted a family with the person he loved. It turned out she wasn't the partner he thought she was, In fact, distancing himself from Megan was helping him more than he expected. He was slowly reaching a stage where he felt indifferent toward her. He was moving on from her and her choices. Soon he might just shrug when he thought about what she had done to him and their marriage, maybe letting out a sigh for what could have been As he finished his lunch, he told himself it was time to file for divorce and take back control from her. She might try to delay things, but she couldn't stop the divorce from happening. With that thought, he picked up his phone and sent the necessary message using his new email account. Soon it would be done. The next morning, he packed up early and continued south. He planned to stop at the Circle Bar X to visit Bill and Connie Blaze for a bit. He was sure they would be glad to see him. It was getting late in the season, and he wanted a more stable place to stay before the first frost made camping uncomfortable. 4 days later, he was more than halfway to Hyannis when he noticed smoke in the distance. A wildfire here could be very dangerous. He tried to find the source of the smoke before calling for help. As he got closer, the smoke began to fade, making him think the fire might be out. Then, when he reached the top of a small hill, he saw what had burned. A helicopter appeared to have made a rough landing in the meadow below and caught fire. Thankfully, the fire seemed to be out and hadn't spread to the grass. He wondered if anyone had survived. As he rode closer, he saw movement near the wreckage. A woman was trying to drag something. When he got near, he yelled, "Hello, is anyone there?" so he wouldn't surprise her. The woman didn't seem shocked at all. In fact, she raised her arm and waved him over. As he approached, she shaded her eyes and said, "I'm so glad to see you. We went down yesterday, but I thought someone would be looking for us by now." Missouri dismounted his horse and let the reins drop. His horses, well-trained quarter horses, would stay put unless scared. "Are you the only one here?" he asked. "No, my partner Jane was hurt. She's over there under the shelter. I think she might have hurt her back during the landing." The pilot didn't make it. Missouri guessed this was a medical helicopter. "Where were you headed?" "We were flying from North Platte to Valentine when we had some kind of electrical problem. The pilot tried to land us safely, but the engine stalled, and we were too low to land properly. After the crash, I got out but couldn't reach Sam before the fire started. He was unconscious, so he probably didn't feel much from the flames." Missouri nodded. "Why did you go so far west if you were headed for Valentine?" He pointed toward the northeast. "It's over that way, and you're not on a straight path between North Platte and Valentine. Oh no, that can't be right. No wonder no one has found us yet. They'll be searching to the east." Sam mentioned he didn't trust the GPS after the power surge, but it must have pointed us this way. The radio stopped working during the surge, and we didn't have time to use the satellite phone before we crashed. Why not try it now? It should connect to a satellite. It was in the aircraft when the fire started. I grabbed the survival gear and tossed it to safety before I went after Jane. By the time I got her out, it was too hot inside. Missouri nodded. They had reached a small shelter. He could hear the other woman in pain. The first woman shrugged. "I couldn't reach the medicines, so she's hurting a lot. With her injuries, I can't move her or she might get worse. She's the nurse and I'm the flight medic. I've made her as comfortable as I can." Missouri looked around and then took out his pocket GPS. After looking at it for a bit, he came up with a plan. "There's no cell service here either. I see there's a ranch house about 10 miles south. As long as there aren't too many fences, I should reach it in a couple of hours and use their phone to call for help. I programmed your location into the GPS, so rescuers shouldn't have to search for long. I'll leave my pack horse here since there's food and a small cook stove and tent if you need them. The paramedic nodded. I wish we could come with you, but it's best if we stay near the plane just in case the locator starts working again. Missouri quickly removed the bags from his pack horse and secured it so it could graze. He then got back on his horse before leaving, he thought for a moment. Since you'll likely be gone before I get back, please tell everyone to leave my horse and packs here. I'll return for them. She nodded. Good luck to you and your partner. I'll get help as soon as I can reach the ranch house. With that, he did something he rarely did. He usually didn't wear spurs since he didn't need to ride fast, but now he nudged his horse and took off at a good pace. It was too far for a sprint, but he and his horse would move quickly to get help. He stopped to open a couple of fences and made good progress. His horse rested a bit as he lowered the wires carefully so they could cross. He didn't bother to close the fence back up. The usual tension would have to do for now. True to his plan, Missouri arrived at the ranch yard a couple of hours after leaving the crash site. Luckily, the rancher was home, so he didn't have to search the house for the phone. After explaining his mission, the rancher called the local authorities. The fire department and ambulance were about 30 minutes away, so the rancher and his workers quickly grabbed their trucks and utility vehicles to reach the site. They packed extra blankets, food, water, and bandages. With the help of Missouri's GPS coordinates, they soon disappeared into the distance. Missouri stayed behind to care for his horse. He took off the saddle and gently brushed the animal. While he worked, he noticed a few helicopters flying overhead. One seemed to be military, and the other looked like a medical helicopter. They were flying straight toward the crash site. Missouri guessed that the sheriff had informed the search teams about where the chopper had gone down. He realized he hadn't asked the paramedic her name, but he knew she and her partner Jane would be heading to the hospital soon. Once his horse was rested, Missouri saddled up and rode back to gather his pack horse and remaining supplies. As he made his way home, he fixed some of the fences along the way. When he arrived at the crash site, the fire department and ambulance were already there. The larger vehicle was parked carefully to avoid leaving tracks that could complicate the investigation, while a couple of smaller trucks approached the area. The ambulance also parked a bit away from the site. Missouri didn't notice when the rancher and his team returned, so he was the only civilian at the crash site. The sheriff and some deputies were there to secure the area and keep onlookers away. One of the deputies informed Missouri that the pilot couldn't be moved until the National Transportation Safety Board arrived. Missouri frowned at the situation, feeling a sense of sadness for the pilot, but knowing it wasn't his responsibility anymore. He had done what he could and began to pack up his horse so he could continue his journey. As soon as he was ready to leave, one of the deputies approached him and said, "In all the excitement, we never got your name. I bet the investigators will want to know who you are. I'm assuming you are the person known as Missouri, right?" Missouri nodded. "You've probably heard about me. If possible, I'd like to just be called Missouri in the reports. I'm not ready to go back home yet, so I need to keep moving. Can you also avoid sharing my direction with others?" The sheriff agreed to keep it confidential. None of the fire and rescue workers were near enough to hear their conversation. Later on, they would simply say that Missouri had vanished over the nearest hill. The sheriff, however, was aware of Missouri's real name and passed it on to the NTSB investigators without sharing it with the press. Missouri didn't realize it, but tales of his journeys were becoming legendary. Megan and the Brooks were on their usual drive, but everyone they spoke to had seen Missouri in different places, sometimes far apart on the same day. People said he helped ranchers and travelers, claiming they heard from others who spotted him with his horses. His hat changed, too. Sometimes he wore a clean white one like a hero from stories, and other times it was black. His horses were all unique. Some witnesses insisted he rode a nearly pure white horse, while others thought he was on a different kind. All that he did made him almost like a legend. Young girls and women said they helped him when he needed it, and would smile secretively when asked how. Some ranchers, where he had stayed a few days to weeks, had daughters of the right age and said Missouri was a true gentleman. His skills as a cowboy were also becoming legendary. Some towns claimed he even entered a local rodeo under a different name and won every competition. He was known for bronc riding, calf roping, and team roping, but no one ever explained why he didn't ride bulls. His horses were known as well. Many cowboys claimed they got to ride one of Missouri's horses during competitions. One barrel racer recounted how her horse got hurt before her event, and Missouri insisted she ride his horse, which had never raced before, and she won that night. Missouri was near the Circle Bar X when a state patrol officer stopped him for a chat. This was unusual. He wasn't speeding on horseback, and he was staying off the road, just in case Megan and her friends happened by. The patrolman waited at a gate for Missouri to approach. He noticed that Missouri had a gun on his hip. Hey there, son. Can you take a moment to talk? I'd like to chat if that's all right with you. Missouri swung his leg over the saddle and leaned back. Sure, I'm not in a hurry. Just going down the road a bit, Is that Bill Blaze's ranch you're headed to? I heard he's a good friend of yours. I wouldn't exactly call him a friend, but he was my mentor and boss when I first came to the Sandhills. Wow. Has it really been only 4 or 5 months? It feels like a lot longer. The days are getting shorter, and the nights are turning colder. I hope he will need some help all winter. That shouldn't be a problem. When I spoke with him last, he told me that I might see you around and that you're welcome here anytime. He paused. Have you spoken with your wife? She sometimes calls us for news about you. I talked to her once. I told her to move on with her life. I have. Why is she still reaching out to you? Well, it might be because of some stories making the rounds. What stories are those? That's when he learned about all the tales people were telling about him. The patrolman laughed as he shared the wild stories he remembered. Missouri was surprised. In just one summer, no one could have done even a small part of what the patrolman was saying, which he mentioned. The patrolman waved his hand. Sure, we all know that, but a bit of mystery and stories make things more interesting. Missouri shook his head. It sounds like those old Western stories. I bet most of them were just made-up tales using real names. They probably wouldn't sell now, but I know there are at least 3 people on social media claiming to be you, arguing over who is the real Missouri. The funny thing is, none of them actually mention your real name. Maybe they don't know it or are keeping it secret to add to the mystery. All you'd need is a mask and someone might start calling you the Lone Ranger. I guess I would need special bullets too. Missouri touched his beard. And I'd need to be clean-shaven to be the hero. They both laughed. Soon the patrolman let Missouri continue on his way as he returned to his duties. After telling his co-workers he had spoken to Missouri, his story grew even more. The next day, he arrived back at the Circle Bar X ranch. He decided to check if Bill needed help for the winter. If so, he would settle in comfortably at night. His skills had improved as he practiced with cattle during his travels. Although he didn't think he was an expert yet, he had some useful skills. If Bill didn't want him there, there were others like Ronnie Bentley at the Double B who might also need help this winter. There wasn't much excitement when he arrived at the ranch. He didn't come in like the heroes from the old movies and guessed someone had seen him approach, so he didn't expect to surprise anyone. He was right. Families from the house stepped out to greet him as he rode in. Hello there, stranger. After your trip around the hills, I bet you'd love a nice cup of coffee and a cozy chair, Bill said with a smile. Missouri laughed. Yes, that sounds great. Can I let my horses out in your corral? Bill grinned wider. Well, I'm not sure. Are you still the same Missouri who rode off early last summer? Connie playfully tapped her husband on the head. Missouri, don't listen to his jokes. There are a ton of funny people out there, and look at who I have to deal with. Come inside once you've taken care of your horses. Bill and Butch kept laughing as they helped Missouri take off the saddle and bags from the horses, giving them a quick brush and some food after putting them in the corral. Then, they helped bring Missouri's things to the bunkhouse, where Missouri was happy to find he still had the same room. Hoss had moved on, but there was a new young helper. Butch introduced them. Missouri, this is Jesse. I call him Outlaw. He's still a bit new, but we have high hopes for him. He turned to the young man. Outlaw, this is Missouri, the real deal legend. Young Jesse looked nervous at meeting a legend, so his handshake was shy. Missouri smiled at him. Later, Butch mentioned that Jesse said he was 18, but Bill thought he might really be a 16-year-old runaway. Bill was looking into it with the sheriff's department. For now, Bill and Butch decided to keep pretending about Outlaw's age until they heard back from the sheriff. Connie invited the young man to dinner every night at the ranch house. That evening, Connie asked Missouri and Butch to join them for dinner to celebrate their friend's return. During the meal, Missouri shared the highlights of his travels, including a funny story about overhearing his wife and her friend at a cafe in Gordon. Bill and Butch chuckled at Missouri's tale about running into his old friend Mark, while young Jesse listened wide-eyed and amazed. After a delicious meal, everyone took turns sharing stories about Missouri's adventures, each trying to make the stories more exciting. Bill had the floor for one tale. The latest story, which is even online now, says you came over the last hill fast and jumped off your horse just in time to catch Casey, the young paramedic, as she fainted with relief after being rescued. Then you built a cozy cabin to shelter her and her partner Jane from a terrible storm before riding right into the chaos to help them. Somehow you even covered the distance to the highway, climbed a cell tower, and called for help. You used your bright flashlight to guide the helicopters to the crash site. After that, you climbed down and brought the others back to help, where you carefully took the pilot from the wreck and led a prayer for him. Missouri was surprised. He then shared the real story. He didn't even know the paramedic's name, and the pilot was still in the wreckage when he returned for his pack horse and supplies, because the authorities had sent instructions to the sheriff's department in that area. The stories kept coming. People talked about spotting Missouri and his different colored horses all over the sandhills, from O'Neill in the east to Alliance in the west. Online stories mentioned sightings as far north as Murdo in South Dakota and as far south as McCook in Nebraska. They all laughed together, thinking about how unlikely it was for a man on horseback to cover that much ground in such a short time. Sure, it was possible, but very unlikely since Missouri had no real reason to hurry. Connie came by and checked Missouri's face and head for any injuries. When asked, she said that he was often reported to have defended women and girls in every town he visited. Some stories came from the people he defended himself against, describing how he easily handled even the biggest and toughest attackers. It was a wonderful evening with old friends and a new one. Outlaw relaxed and started teasing Missouri like the others. Bill eventually asked what Missouri's plans were. I hope I can help out this winter. I think I'm done traveling for a bit. If Megan comes back, I'll talk to her and let her know I want a divorce. She can have the house and part of my money if she agrees. If she fights me, I'll share my story and it won't go well for her. It's her choice. Bill and Connie nodded. Bill spoke first. Of course, you have a job here at the Circle Bar X. Most of the work is done, but we need to bring the hay bales back to the ranch house for winter feed. With you here, we can get that settled quickly. Then just keep an eye on the cows until we need to bring them closer, Connie added. We've become somewhat popular because of your travels. Somehow it's spread that the Circle Bar X is your home, and people drop by to see if you've returned yet. You have quite a fan group around here, If that's okay with you, I'd like to be out riding along the fence whenever visitors come by. I wouldn't know what to say to any of my fans other than not to believe everything they hear. We've received a couple of calls from that girl, Casey, and her friend Jane. They want to thank you in person for saving their lives. The emergency alarm in the tail section didn't go off and got damaged in the fire. It's hard to say how long it would have taken to find them. Bill took a moment to think. Will you see them if they come by? I'm not sure when that Jane person will leave the hospital. The news said her injuries were pretty serious. Missouri nodded. Yes, I'll meet them. That Casey girl had everything under control when I got there. She made sure Jane was as comfortable as possible. She even used my small tent for extra protection and cooked them a meal to hold them over until help arrived. By the time I got back, they had already been airlifted and were probably at the hospital in North Platte or Kearney. I really don't know where they ended up since the firefighters and EMTs at the scene weren't quite sure either. That dinner set the mood for Missouri's return to the ranch. When he got back, he saw that Bill had gone to Hyannis and picked up Missouri's truck, which was being kept in one of the machine sheds. Missouri got it ready to pull a used horse trailer he bought nearby. If he needed to travel again, he could take his trusty horses with him, possibly to Wyoming or North Dakota. He drove to Alliance to get new clothes since his old ones were worn from all the traveling. He wore an old wide-brimmed hat and trimmed his full beard down to a goatee with a mustache. Nobody seemed to recognize him while he shopped, which he found helpful. True to his promise, Bill had Missouri go out on horseback every time strangers came to the ranch. One of the questions he would ask any visitor was if they had seen Missouri lately. They would all laugh about the supposed sightings, even though Missouri hadn't really left the ranch in weeks. It was now late fall. The days were still warm, but there was a chill in the air at night, and frost warnings were common. The last of the hay bales were moved from the fields to the smaller pastures, where the cows would spend the winter. Fixing fences was always on the to-do list. Missouri would ride a horse to check the fences and practice roping fence posts. He was getting better all the time. He still carried his .45 on his hip just in case he ran into a pesky coyote or an upset badger. In early November, some unwelcome visitors arrived. Megan came with the Brooks to the Circle Bar X. For the first time since she began her search, she and the Brooks were invited into the ranch house while Missouri was called in. The Brooks were firmly told to stay in the car. They were upset at first, but Butch had a quiet talk with them, and soon they were much calmer. Butch later told Bill that he had let them know there was a lot of empty space for a couple of lonely graves, and that seemed to deflate their spirits. He made sure to bring them some water to keep hydrated, while Megan waited to speak with her estranged husband. Connie introduced herself and Bill to Megan, guiding her to the dining table and offering her a glass of water. They chose not to speak further. To them, Megan was seen as the enemy of their friend, and they felt no need for polite conversation. Megan waited for about 30 minutes until she heard footsteps coming from the kitchen. The man who entered the dining room from the kitchen looked unfamiliar. He seemed taller than her husband, with longer hair than Kelly usually had. He squinted as if he was used to bright sunlight. A black Western hat with a wide brim shaded his eyes, and he wore a mustache and goatee. In contrast, her husband always kept a clean-shaven face. He gave a brief nod to acknowledge her presence, set a glass of water on the table, then sat down across from her, leaning back in the chair and resting his legs. "Well, Megan, you finally found me. I've decided not to avoid you anymore so we can deal with this situation and you can move forward with your life." Megan stayed silent, still trying to connect this cowboy to her husband. His voice was familiar, but nothing else seemed to match with the Kelly she had known for over 6 years. Finally, she reached her hand out to him. "Is it really you, Kelly?" He nodded. She glanced around and noticed Connie peeking from the hallway. "Are you trying to trick me? Is this some kind of joke? I have searched for my husband for months, and now you bring in this stranger to pretend to be Kelly Free? Do you think I'm a fool? Where is my husband?" Connie shook her head and pointed at the man. "This is the man who came to our ranch tired and hurt. He told us his name but hasn't used it again since that day. This is Missouri, but he used to be Kelly Free. He has changed and grown since you knew him. He's become a better man, and now you both need to sit down and talk to work through everything so he can heal and you can both move on. But this is a stranger. I know you don't want me here, but how could you do this? You say Kelly is here, but then bring in this guy." Megan broke down, tears flowing. "I need my husband. I need Kelly. Please bring him to me. I'm really asking you to be kind. I've been searching for so long. Please, please." She hid her face in her hands on the table. Megan, please listen. How do I put this? I am Kelly Free. I might not look like the man you remember, but I am still your husband, at least for a little while. You chose to start something new with Mary and Mark Brooks, thinking I would just accept it and maybe even join. I was shocked, upset, and disappointed. I couldn't stay in Missouri anymore, so I drove here and found a job after my truck broke down. I learned new things and traveled to find my way. Now I'm finally ready to talk to you." Megan shook her head. This man, this stranger with facial hair and a black hat, sounded like her Kelly, but he seemed taller, more mature, and stronger. Could this really be her Kelly? She looked around. Connie Blaze had come in and sat next to her, holding her hand for comfort. Kelly spoke about a few memories they had shared before everything changed. These were things no one else would know. He took off his hat and put it on the table. It was hard to accept, but this man was her husband. He looked like someone from the Old West. She glanced to see if he had a gun. There wasn't a revolver, but there was a pistol. Kelly noticed where her gaze was directed. He carefully placed the gun on the table beside his hat. "I'm sorry if you don't feel safe right now. I carry this to protect myself from coyotes and rattlesnakes when I'm out riding. I often forget I have it on . But why did you leave me? I love you. I left because I saw that I wasn't enough for you. You broke the promises we made before God, our friends and family. You started seeing others without discussing it with me. It hurt me deeply and made me feel disrespected. I needed to leave to process everything. I finally understand how you treated me, but it was just Mary and Mark, our friends. We were just getting closer, Maybe that's how you saw it. I felt betrayed and sick when I came home unexpectedly and found you all together in our home. I had to leave before I did something I would regret, something that would hurt both you and your friends, What do you mean by regret? She asked, When I was standing in that doorway watching you with others, I felt lost. I didn't know whether to cry, to feel sick, or to confront you about the hurt you caused me in our relationship. When you got up and came to me, looking the way you did, I felt so overwhelmed that I had to walk away to keep my calm, He paused to gauge her reaction. She still didn't seem to understand the depth of the pain he felt. He continued, I drove around town for hours just trying to escape. I realized that I didn't want to think about what we had lost. But once I ended up here in Hyannis, I had to face the truth. Our marriage was finished. There was no going back from all the lies. I wasn't ready to talk to you, so I took a job at the Circle Bar X. The people here welcomed me even though they didn't have to. I knew nothing about working on a ranch, but they took me in, showed me kindness, and taught me how to be a hard worker. They never looked down on me for my past. Connie listened closely to Missouri's words. She knew how much they had helped him, and there were things he would never understand about their support. His friends were always nearby, ready to help him if he needed it. They were proud that he had stood on his own throughout his journey. He had transformed into the strong person that writers like Zane Grey or Louis L'Amour would have admired. He had become someone people respected, a true sandhiller. He could hold his head high wherever he went, whether traveling the country or returning to the city. She thought of his old boss. What was his name again? Maybe Jerry? She imagined his former boss would think twice before judging Missouri now. He had developed the confidence and strength to face any challenge. Meanwhile, Megan seemed unable to accept Kelly's presence after their long separation. She shook her head in disbelief. This couldn't be real. After all this time, she had hoped Kelly would return and embrace her again when they finally met. He cared about her and wanted her in his life. This was the fantasy she had created for herself over the months. She still believed that Kelly would accept her way of living and that she and Mary would have their fun with him before Mark would be with him again so they could all start fresh. All she needed was to get Kelly in a room alone and everything would be fine. Kelly noticed her look and realized she was still set on the plans she had made last spring in Missouri. He sighed. He didn't know how to make her see that her dreams felt like a nightmare to him. There would be no fixing things between them. He tried again. Megan, now that you believe I am Kelly, let's be clear. When you go home, you will receive divorce papers. Please sign them so we can move on. I've been fair with you. Check the papers. The agreement I offer is reasonable. You can then build a life with the Brooks. She shook her head. No, I won't accept that. You just need to feel the love we all share. Then you will see what I've been trying to show you. The experience of being with two women and the joy of seeing us care for each other, and then the special moments with Mark. You will understand. No, Megan. I can't. That life isn't for me. You need to leave and not try to contact me again. I will be at the hearing with the judge. If you try to block the divorce, I will tell the news everyone and share everything. Your parents and friends likely won't want to be around you anymore because they don't believe in your lifestyle. The Brooks may also feel embarrassed and may turn away from you when things get tough. Just sign the papers and you can live in your fantasy for as long as you want. He stood up and stepped away from the table. He was finished with the discussion, even though Megan was still trying to defend her choices and pull him back in. She was trying to get up but was having a hard time. He had only looked at her face before, but now he saw that her belly was larger. So, I guess Mark is the father. When is the baby due? Do your parents know, or have you been keeping it a secret from them? She pointed to her belly. This is because of you, Kelly. The joy of that day when you came home early was the hope of telling you that you would be a father. I thought sharing this news would help bring you into our lives, as Mark and Mary had already agreed to be godparents. He laughed. Do you really think I would believe this story you are telling me? You honestly think that hearing you are pregnant, possibly with my child but more likely Mark's, would make me so happy that I would join you all in your complicated life? You are more out of touch than I ever imagined. Missouri turned at the kitchen door. When your child is born, we will do a paternity test. If it's mine, I will pay for their needs but won't ask to see them. To me, that child will not be a part of my life. They can call Mark Daddy. He walked out the kitchen door. Megan ran to stop him but could only watch as her husband, who felt like a stranger now, mounted his horse and rode away from the ranch. Missouri didn't look back at her tear-filled face. Megan finally realized what she had done. Since she had opened up her life to having multiple relationships, things had only become tougher. All her hopes had fallen apart. Kelly wouldn't even acknowledge the child growing inside her. She had no husband. Her job was shaky since she had taken so much time off to find him, and her relationships with the Brooks were not fulfilling. Mary and Mark seemed more interested in their own happiness than in making sure she felt happy too. Megan slowly returned to the dining room where Connie was still sitting. She looked at Connie, the ranch wife. He truly is my child's father. Mark had a surgery years ago when he and Mary chose to not have kids. There has been no one else since we became a couple. Connie couldn't help but say, "It seems you might have forgotten what being exclusive means." Megan sat down heavily in a chair. I know. I thought this would be good for all of us. 4 people loving each other completely without any jealousy, all in sync. Everything I read online made it seem like this was the best way. The statistics said there's less cheating in open relationships and that many people are happy that way. Connie shook her head. Haven't you heard? You can't believe everything you read online. Even we simple folks know that. Most cultures moved away from having multiple partners long ago because it just doesn't work in the long run. It's hard enough to be with one person. Pleasing several is nearly impossible. Megan began to cry quietly. After a moment, she found some control and looked at Connie. Tell Kelly I'm going home, but I will fight the divorce. This child needs both a father and a mother, and that's the only reason I'll stand my ground. She stood up and rejoined her partners, and soon they disappeared from view. Just as the dust settled, Missouri returned to the ranch house. Connie shared what Megan had said, and he simply nodded. He hoped she would accept things, but deep down, he knew she wouldn't give up easily. Life moved on. Kelly returned to his hometown in Missouri for his divorce hearing. Lawrence filed everything needed correctly, and Megan responded as she had said she would. She admitted she had made mistakes, but told the judge that she had ended her close relationship with the Brooks. They were still friends, but not in a romantic way anymore. She asked for help through counseling. The judge listened carefully and scheduled another court date in 2 weeks. While waiting, Kelly stayed with his parents. They were surprised by how much he had changed. They were happy about his growth, but disappointed in Megan's actions. They had loved her like a daughter, but they were upset with her for hurting their son. During this time, Megan gave birth to a lovely baby girl, and she named her Kelly. Tests confirmed that Kelly was the father. Kelly's parents softened a bit toward Megan since they wanted to be a part of their granddaughter's life. Before Kelly went home from the hospital, Kelly visited her. Even though he didn't want to admit it, he felt a pull in his heart for the baby. Things might have been so different if Megan hadn't chosen the path she did. Now he feared he would be an absent father. Megan often took little Kelly to visit her grandparents, but Kelly avoided those visits. He left just before she would arrive. At the next hearing, the judge announced his decision. After reviewing all the information presented, I've concluded that marital counseling won't be effective. Mr. Free, you seem to have started anew in Nebraska. Based on what I've read, it appears you have left Mrs. Free behind. The judge ordered that Megan should receive 50% of their shared assets by the end of the week. He also set child support for Kelly. There would be no spousal support since Kelly earned less than Megan. The judge established a visitation schedule for Kelly, allowing him to see Kelly every Wednesday, every other weekend, and 6 weeks during the summer, even though Kelly had not asked for visits. He instructed Megan to ensure that Kelly could see his daughter during half of the holidays each year. If Mr. Free returns to this court saying you haven't followed this order, I will not be happy, and I may reconsider custody. I'm tired of adults who use children in their disputes. Do you understand?" Megan stood up and responded, "Your Honor, I wish for this divorce not to happen, and I hope my husband will come back to me and our daughter." Since he wanted to end their marriage, I decided not to stop him from seeing our child, hoping that one day he might change his mind and want to be a family again. Kelly didn't say anything to the judge. With a firm tap of the gavel, it was official. Kelly and Megan were no longer married. He made sure that all his belongings, even the ones his lawyer had kept hidden, were divided fairly. This way, their daughter Kelly would have everything she needed as long as her mother managed the finances. Kelly left for Nebraska the next day. When he returned, things were different. While staying with his parents, he reached out to some of his old clients. They were happy to hear from him and eager to work with his new consulting business for finding properties. Now, working for himself, Missouri added a unique touch. He took his horse, which he finally named Leroy after the song Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy, to various locations where businesses might be interested. He would spend weeks riding around, exploring even in busy areas. He found that people were curious and enjoyed talking to a man on horseback. Between his trips, he worked as a ranch hand again, enjoying the physical work. It gave him time to think and plan while keeping his hands busy. In the winter, when there were fewer chores except for feeding the animals, he was able to connect with his family online. He helped Bill set up a better cell phone signal, making video calls easier. He was getting to know his daughter better, as she was often at his parents' house during his calls. There was also excitement in the town about visitors searching for the legend known as Missouri. Soon, an SUV from out of state arrived at the Circle Bar X. Thankfully, the people inside were friendly and introduced themselves without any attitude. They were agents from a cable network that focused on stories about relationships, and the buzz about Missouri had caught their interest. By the end of the day, they promised to keep Missouri's identity safe by changing names, dates, and places, ensuring that only a few would recognize the real story. They planned to call it The Man from Missouri, but they would change his hometown. Missouri also had the agents reach out to Megan for her thoughts and approval, even though it wasn't strictly necessary since the story would be fictional. Butch got a new role as the connection to Hollywood. Missouri learned that the quiet man had a degree in communications and knew some lawyers. With the help of Butch and Lawrence Roberts, Missouri quickly found a public relations expert and an entertainment lawyer to support him. A company was quickly set up, and now Missouri was a CEO, with Bill and Connie on his board and all the staff at Circle Bar X as shareholders. The next change came when Megan reached out to Missouri about a job. "Kelly, I need to be more than just someone on a screen for your daughter. After the movie people got in touch with me, I realized I might not want to stay in Missouri anymore. Your parents and I have talked, and we'd like to move closer to you. Is there a place near the ranch where we could all live so we can see you more? Also, are there any job opportunities nearby?" Kelly was caught off guard by this news. It was a twist in his life he hadn't expected, but it felt good. "Actually, Megan, I need help with the movie deal. I think you'd be perfect for this. I'll call you back. After he hung up, he called his parents to share the news. They brainstormed ideas, some rejected, but others developed into a solid plan. Kelly then went to the Hyannis Village Board to propose building a couple of nice homes on the edge of town. Some might wonder why a small village would need more houses, but new homes could place stress on local resources and needed careful thought. Fortunately, the village could manage the additional homes, and the project got the green light. Megan began moving right away. Kelly found her a small but decent mobile home, and soon she and Kelly were settled in. Baby Kelly was affectionately called Miss Missouri in honor of her dad. One of the writers for the movie arrived in an RV and parked at the campground, leading to an expansion of the film. Before long, The Man from Missouri grew into multiple parts. The first movie would tell the original story of betrayal and healing. The second part would focus on divorce and redemption, with the writer planning to reunite the couple. This segment might air on a network known for love stories. The writer also looked for ways to include some famous events from Missouri to keep the audience engaged. Some even suggested turning it into a series instead of just 2 movies. As for Missouri's romantic life, he and Megan had moved on. They remained friends and co-parents to Miss Missouri, but nothing more. However, Missouri was not meant to be alone. While new homes were being designed and built for Megan and his parents, someone new appeared at the ranch. One day, a van pulled in. Missouri was in the bunkhouse when a woman stepped out of a car. She was a nice-looking lady using crutches. She introduced herself as Jane Gantry and wanted to thank him for saving her life. Her driver was a cheerful paramedic named Casey. Missouri often stayed away from his fans, but this time he chose to chat with the two women. Jane praised him to Bill and Connie, telling them how great he was. Casey agreed with her a lot. Bill and Connie smiled at Missouri, who seemed a bit shy about all the compliments. After a while, Connie asked Jane about her injuries. Jane responded, "I hurt my back badly in the accident. I've been recovering for a long time and was in a wheelchair for months while I did therapy. I'm getting better and hope to leave these crutches behind soon. I also finished my nursing degree. I can't fly anymore, so I'm looking to start a clinic. Do you think Hyannis needs more health care?" Casey added, "I'm working to get my RN too, and I want to help Jane. I've been dealing with some tough feelings since the crash, but I'm currently working on an ambulance while I earn my license. This first meeting led to more discussions about their plans. They needed to find out what kind of medical care Hyannis might need. They also looked for a building to set up a clinic. Over the coming months, Missouri was busy with many things, helping at the ranch, moving his parents, getting to know his daughter, sorting out stories for a movie, planning the clinic, and meeting clients. He felt very overwhelmed with it all. Jane noticed Missouri needed a break. She had gotten better and no longer needed the crutches, but she still couldn't stand for too long. As she healed, their meetings turned from strictly about business to more personal chats. Jane was a good-looking 35-year-old who had gone through a tough time with a past relationship and had been cautious about getting close to men since then. Although she and Casey had had a close friendship before, they were now best friends, almost like sisters. Casey had also faced her share of challenges with relationships, which made her wary of men until after the crash. When Missouri showed up at the accident scene and took charge, she admired him for how he handled the situation and saw him as her hero. The two women often talked about Missouri, sharing their feelings. Jane began to see him not just as a hero, but as someone she could appreciate as a friend, and maybe even something more. Casey wisely warned her friend to never hurt the man, or Jane would face serious trouble. Similar to what happened to Megan. Jane persuaded Missouri that they should take a short break together. It was early summer again. The cold was gone, and the hills were bright green. Branding season was finished, and they had a few weeks before it was time to cut hay. This time, Jane decided to join him, pretending to take care of him. She had not ridden much before, so she quickly learned how to ride a horse. Missouri was hesitant to let her come along, but after hearing from everyone, including Megan and his parents, that he shouldn't travel alone anymore, he agreed that having a companion could be nice. During that week of just riding and camping at the Circle Bar X, they turned off their phones and grew closer. By the end of the week, they were engaged. Megan knew when the couple left for their trip that she was now only a co-worker and co-parent to Missouri. She accepted this and began seeing Butch as her next and hopefully last love. Over time, Missouri and Jane had two half-brothers from Jane's dad, the famous man from Missouri, and two half-sisters from her mother and Butch. She became a wonderful big sister and friend to all of them. Bill and Connie were like grandparents to the whole family. The movie based on their story became popular. The only mention of the original story was a quick note in the credits stating it was inspired by the life of Kelly Free. This note flashed by so fast that few noticed it. The film led to a few more movies, including one about redemption and starting anew, which was very emotional. Kelly Free invested in the Circle Bar X, and his bond with Bill and Connie remained strong until they passed away at an old age on their home range. Jane made sure that a medical helicopter was always available in case they needed a quick ride to the hospital, so they never felt the need to leave their home. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to Infidelity Plus to stay updated with more captivating tales of infidelity and payback. Turn on notifications so you're the first to see our latest content.